Welcome to the Heartwork&Philosophy Guild meeting of May the 9th. Just a reminder that this will be posted on YouTube, so if you're not able to attend, you can watch the video and get a sense of what we're talking about. I'm wondering if anybody has a check-in question just before we get started. Ben, you look like you might have a question verbally.
No, I'm trying to think of one.
I don't have a question, but I have a slight variation that I'd like to try out.
Go ahead.
So just take a minute. You don't need to say anything out loud, but take a minute to set aside any burdens that you need to set aside to be present. That is my check-in idea.
Do we want to review the agreements?
Okay. I will call that up.
Thank you.
And I'm wondering, while I do that, is there anyone who would like to do a land acknowledgement?
Always up for one, and I can do quick and easy. We start by acknowledging the land as a reminder to ourselves that it is through the land that we are all connected to each other and to all our relations. And so we take the moment to bring ourselves to what really matters, to what really counts and what's really real. And in doing so, we recognize our interconnection and our interdependence simply is how things are. And so as we move through the meeting, can we be mindful of that no matter what we do, we're all in this together. And likewise, to take a moment to acknowledge and to express our gratitude to the indigenous cultures of the world, for me in particular to the Wasanic, who have been the keepers from time immemorial of this place, a place that I am very happy to call home at the moment. And yeah, and with that comes also a reminder that we should strive to be good relations and good ancestors. So back to you, Roland.
Thank you. Okie dokie. So land acknowledgement, check. Check-in and grounding, check. Agreements. Back to you, April.
Well, Ben has mentioned as part of the land acknowledgement, one of the agreements that we understand that we are all in this together. You have choice in being part of this session or any of the sessions that we deal with, in that if you don't want to be part of what's going on, you don't have to be, but remember that choices have consequences. We ask that we lead with curiosity, kindness, patience, compassion, and gentleness, both for ourselves and for those with whom we're working, whom we are being colleagues. We ask to listen for understanding before coming back with an opinion, and to speak from the heart when you're doing that. Speak about what is true for you. Remembering that in all of this, we can entertain both and, not either or. We like to have fun. We ask that we find the humor and keep it simple. And just a reminder that this session is recorded and posted to YouTube. Are there any other issues that we should put under agreements, or are people with us today fine with what we've suggested here? Ben?
Oh, okay, we're doing a round. I am good with the agreements, and recently I've been leaning into listening for understanding. And understand, I often say something about including listening to the words that you say for understanding. And I think it's in the same spirit of when you feel compelled to give advice to other people, you're really talking to yourself. And so I think that's part of the listening for understanding in my mind, is remembering that as we're talking, the world is our mirror. And so any judgment, any questions, any advice really are something to reflect back on. So, but anyhow, that's I like the agreements, and that's just the one that's kind of alive for me today. Over to Roland.
I agree to this list of agreements, and I have nothing to add. Well, I always have something to add, but these are good enough for now. And this I just sent in the chat. The circle as I see it is April, Ben, and then me. Ergo, I shall. I think I'm suggesting that we can also just go over what we understand as being the function of the guild. There's what's written, and I'm suggesting that we also do a round of um, uh, in addition to that, how we understand what the Heartwork and Philosophy Guild is about and what it does. So over to you, April.
Okay, so I'm agreeing to the agreements, but what else am I talking about? The actual role of the guild and the responsibilities as I understand them?
We have the primary function of the guild here
Right.
being shared. And so in addition to that, is there anything to add or anything uh, to go deeper into that you wanted to add? And it's okay if you want to pass or if this seems complete.
Well, just one thing that popped into my mind when we were talking about agreements is I was thinking about how I actually do stick or not stick to those agreements. But and for me, there's something about trying to stick to them, because how you do anything is how you do everything. I think it was Annie Dillard that said that. But for me, that helps to remind myself to be values-based and to take care, I guess, with conversations, with agreements, and so on. And that would seem to fall quite well under the emotional heart of the Lifeboat Academy for me. And over to Ben.
I have been thinking seasonal review, and so I welcome the opportunity to reflect on the function of the guild, and to continue that conversation about how the guilds relate to each other, and kind of coming. I was trying to remind myself of at the annual design charrette how we were talking about the functions, the organs, and the emotional heart. What does that mean? And especially because as we get further into it, well, and I'm looking forward to the book club conversation too, because I think as we start to kind of refine what it is we're working on, like what we're actually doing, that we get clarity. And so, AMAC, reflect, and lean into the process. So yeah, as we get further along, what is the essence, and what do we do about that? So over to you, Roland.
We have an outreach and networking guild, and the Heartwork is the inreach and relationality guild. So I'm going to leave that little poetic line as my addition. Um, yeah. uh, so um, should I will April, anything to add in or next steps?
Well, I just want to add to your phrase, Roland, that might be one of those classic bumper stickers that I'm always looking for. And I have nothing else to add in terms of responsibilities, except that I'm starting to understand them better over time and starting to see how things can fit together. And also very interested in being a vibes watcher. I guess I always am a vibes watcher anyway, and now to have that as part of a consolidated role is quite pleasing to me, although I'm not quite sure what that means or how I describe a vibe. So that's it. Next steps is in terms of moving through the agenda. Is that to what you were referring?
Indeed.
Okay, I think moving to see who's going to be the note taker would be the next step, and I'm very appreciative of Ben volunteering to do that. Thank you so much.
Yep, already doing it.
Okay. And so that means we move on to priorities. I guess both to check our agenda and see if there's anything else that needs to be there, including if there's other guilds to report on in terms of our relationship.
Hmm.
Is that
So,
over to me?
yes,
Um, I want to talk book club, and I would say that the only relevant update I would have from the other guilds is that tomorrow we are having the first meeting of the Six Conversations Facilitation Subcircle. And I expect that I think that we've really refined what that project looks like. I think it's awesome that that is sort of the clear direction for the outreach and network guild as a first big step. And I think given that how Roland sort of framed it, we've got outreach, we know what outreach is doing, and we're in reach, and what's that mean? And sort of discussing the book club as at least one potential avenue for what that would look like for us. And so I'm that's the I see that it's on the agenda list, and that's where I'd like to spend my time, and I don't think I have anything to add other than that. Over to you, Roland.
I would like to add actually go talking about the seasonal plan. Since that we received an email with instructions. There's no date yet, but that doesn't mean that we can't start talking about it. And actually, it probably is a good thing that we don't wait.
Yeah.
And we at the very least we think we start figuring out what we need to think about. So I'm going to add it here in the agenda. Um, and we can decide where that goes in terms of priorities for the agenda today. So that's I think the only thing that I am also wondering, we've just been talking sort of internally recently about badges. Is that a heart work, or is that I think that's actually a governance thing, isn't it?
Uh, so each guild is responsible for its own badges.
Right.
Governance is responsible for managing all of the badges together.
Got it. Okay.
But
So
yeah, we need to think about, and it is also, it is noted in the seasonal planning. It is a step in the seasonal planning.
all right. I'm adding that back to you, April.
I have nothing else to add to the agenda. So over to Ben.
I have nothing to add. I think I guess my question is, do we want to start with the book club or start with the planning? Um, and I would vote for book club, but I would easily be swayed to another position. Over to you, Roland.
And actually, would if you would hang on to that spot that you have been, I can't remember how do we go about the order, agreeing to an order of what we're going to talk about. Do we do that in rounds, or I can't remember how we do that.
There's no fixed way. In my experience, often it's kind of clear when once you go through the items, it's kind of clear that there's a natural order. If that's the case, then the caretaker can just suggest it. It mostly only becomes an issue if there's more than we think we can get through and we have to prioritize things. And it would be totally reasonable to time box to actually do a round to sequence and time box it. That would be totally legitimate and valid way of moving forward. It's at the discretion of the caretaker.
Okay. And I can't remember what is there's an agenda item that's called alternative formats. Does anyone remember what that is?
I was going, actually, when I was reviewing from this morning, I looked back and it's just been automatically carried forward and there's no notes or anything. So I think we should just delete it.
Okay. Agreed. Agreed, April?
Yes.
And also in the seasonal review, and it's the seasonal reflection, there's a question in there for everyone to think about in terms of meeting efficiency and format. So I think that probably alternative formats might be what that was in reference to. So I think it's actually gotten wrapped into that other item.
Okay. All right. So for me, this is the order of conversation that I am proposing. So over to April about any changes, anything that you'd rather prioritize or deprioritize.
Or deep six even. uh, I'm thinking that the badge question could sort of be subsumed under celebration of the circle, because I think creating a badge could be a bit of a celebration and a recognition that we're moving somewhat as a guild. I just have a sense of that. So they kind of, to me, one is a subtask of another, I believe. That's simply my opinion. And now I'm moving on to my colleague, Ben.
I would go the other way around. I would move the celebration under because well, and I just know that it is one of the standard questions in the seasonal review is to look at because in the context of the seasonal review, the badges are what are the skills that we need to complete the work of the guild. And so it fits in that context of, what are we focusing on? And actually, I think that the celebration could be a badge, could be one of those badges. So I think it could get carried into that one. And I can take care of making that change.
Okay. I was just trying to see if there was an easy make into subtask button somewhere.
You can
Um,
unmake a subtask, and I have not found the easy way of making something a subtask.
okay.
I will explore that more because would be handy.
So, all right. I'm not sure where we are in circle, so I'm going to start it over again. And just give me a sign if you want to, if there's anything else that you want to talk about in terms of the agenda. Otherwise, we will go into the book club. Everyone good? Okay, so we are entering into book club territory. And we don't currently have any notes about the book club that's been ported over.
I went back through and I couldn't find any in the places that I looked. There may be some buried deep.
Okay.
But I think I think a lot of the notes got actually converted into the 6 conversations.
Uh-huh. And
So it
and I
might
think
be worth, revisiting it from the start.
yeah, well, and I feel like we likely will remember the salient points around the book club just through conversation, and we can start our note taking fresh. Yeah, and my understanding for the book club is that we are agreed that it's a good idea, and we're discussing what the format would be, and the types of discussions or the form that the discussions would take. So over to do you want to popcorn for
Yeah, I think what you were saying is worth taking that we probably remember the salient points. I think it's worthwhile covering what we think the salient points are, sort
okay.
of recreating gathering considerations, and then going into the form, because I think that would make the form conversation easier.
Okay, so right now on the shared screen, I'm on the book club page. Do you want me to go back to, no, okay, we are there.
Yep.
So I will pass over to April to start the circle.
And I'm giving you what I recall as a salient point or two. I think one of the points about the book club is that it's a really good way to include some texts that we think are foundational and seminal to the kind of meta overarching thing that we're trying to come to grips with and work on and achieve. Over to Ben.
Yeah, and I think for me that's also well, I'll say one point is I am looking for something more than a book club. If I'm actually, I'm looking for a seminar more than a book club, because I want it to be a collaborative, a collective knowledge creation, not just a what did you like? I don't know how to, do you know what I mean? Like, it's really easy for book club to become a kind of, or for books to become a kind of addiction. Like, we just read a lot of books and aren't they interesting, and then on to the next book. But actually giving some thought to how is the information in this book useful to what we're doing. So um, I guess in a way it's a ditto to what you're saying, April, because it's how do we think about what do we need to know to do this work well? And in part, that's actually kind of, we still have to define, we're constantly defining what is this work. And I think that's where a lot of these books and conversations can help. Over to you, Roland.
Agreed. Agreed with all that's been said. And where the 6 conversations took over from our discussion about the book club was where we were talking about sort of in reaching to study things together to help develop our common understanding. Um, uh, so, yeah, the book club is an opportunity to continue to develop our common understanding of what the Lifeboat Academy is about and what it does. Uh, and that is part of the ongoing and always growing pool of knowledge and understanding. Uh, and there's something that I'm trying to spit out, and I'm not quite getting to it. So I'm going to pass for now and let the circle work its magic. So I will pass back to April.
Thank you. Um, I'm having, I guess, some definitional thinking going on and wondering whether we want to call this book club at all, because that sounds a bit recreational and leisurely to me, as compared to being able to look at certain texts in a seminar knowledge exchange kind of way. And that could have some implications. It could be that we read these things as book club and just treat them as book club would on one occasion, and then have other times that we can meet together in a seminar type approach. Or we can just agree that this is not a recreational book club in any way, and that we are knowledge seekers, I suppose, and knowledge creators. And that's what we mean. And that may have been more than one thing that I said. I do apologize. And over to Ben. No, yes.
I don't think that was more than one thing. And I feel like, I think all three of us are feeling into it. And I think that's a right and appropriate thing. And in that spirit, if we could figure out, because I think Roland, you said something around, or maybe April, I can't remember, anyhow, about kind of creating the syllabus. The one way that I'm thinking about this is, how would we co-create the syllabus for the academy? And are there actually, now that I'm saying it, it's also part of the onboarding materials, where here it's sort of, well, I'm thinking about a lit review for a research project or a syllabus for an introductory course. And we talk a lot about the Venn diagram, about what we are doing is at the intersection of mindfulness and collaboration and re-indigenization or decolonialization, and land use and access to the land and food sovereignty and economic justice and social justice, and that's a lot. So how, and it would be, I think it's simply impossible to expect anyone to show up with a knowledge of all of those areas. And I think what it also becomes, and I might be doing more than one thing. So there's that sort of, what's the background reading to help bring people up to speed? And then there's also us exploring what are the intersections. So in that spirit of both and, where is the overlap? What is the connection between economic justice and social justice, or resilience and community building? So yeah, I'll try to figure out how to write that note over to you, Roland.
So I just want to call something out. I don't think that we are actually recalling what the salient points are right now. I think that we are actually in gathering considerations. I think that's fine. I think that's fine. And we can identify if we remember something, we're like, oh yeah, I remember we also talked about this. And we can, I think it's fine that we're continuing, that we're doing some gathering considerations. So because I pulled us back, I think research project was what the point I was trying to get at before, which was the bit that I wasn't quite getting, and also that knowledge seeking can be fun, and there's psychological inoculation. So what we actually name it, I think, is probably important. So, and I like the idea of putting in the phrase knowledge sharing. So it could be a knowledge sharing fair, it could be a knowledge sharing party, it could be a knowledge sharing celebration, it could be just a knowledge sharing circle. So I like the idea of using knowledge sharing. I was actually thinking of using the phrase knowledge keeper, but that 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 doesn't sound quite right. So knowledge sharing sounds really good to me. Over to April.
Um, it well, in terms of the Venn diagrams, because now I'm stuck in Venn diagram land, where I spend quite a bit of time actually in my head. We're talking about a nexus and an overlap in terms of how this is connected or seated or located or whatever. I think that popped into my head. The other thing is we can, yeah, I knowledge should be part of whatever we call this, I believe. But we also want to make sure that when we're attracting people to this whole idea that I'm not sure, but maybe people are more willing to be part of a book club because it sounds lighter than being part of a knowledge sharing whatever. So is this knowledge sharing light or what? I don't know. I'm passing over to Ben now to rescue me.
Well, and I am feeling like yeah, I had a very quick reaction. I was like, you know what? That's outreach. This is hard work. And and I think all of a sudden that distinction of, you know, outreach might want to do a book club. Heart work wants to do something different.
Yeah.
And I think that that's appropriate. And so I think personally, I'm not overly fussed that we make this um, lowest common denominator. In part because, frankly, we should be trying to attract. I've been thinking a lot lately, sort of this is it's a tangent, but I'll just make it quickly. But I think part of what we need in our engagement is actually making it tougher for people. I think that presenting more of a challenge, and a sort of a clear, are you ready to step up? And here's what it means to step up.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think that we do want to be careful in the naming about the spirit of the folk that we want to attract, which is why I like Roland's point about, keeping something in it that is that balance between, it's knowledge sharing. I think it's more generative. I think it's knowledge creation.
Yeah.
But there's or maybe that feels really juicy. It's, you know what I think it is? I think it's the Connect the Dot Club.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's, it's the Venn diagram club or the Connect the Dot Club,
Yeah.
because it's about taking these ideas and so there are tons of interesting books out there. So what? You know, how does that help? How is that relevant? And and what do we do when one book says one thing is the all important something, and another book says no, this other thing is the all important something? And how do we have a both hand understanding in the conversation? Um, yeah. And Roland, can you scroll down? Because my notes are further down than where you are. Thanks. Over to you, Roland.
Oh, yeah, I perked up when I heard the Connect the Dots Club. So I think that bears considering in my mind. And there's also, in terms of naming, and there's psychological inoculation, and then there's also the coyote principle. So calling it a book club could also be kind of a coyote way of drawing people in. But I'm really curious about your point. Curious in terms of willing to test it out. Your point about actually making it not trying to I guess it's appease, not trying to appease or to please the lowest common denominator, but actually making it challenging, so that we get, if we call it the Connect the Dots Club, will we get more curiosity? Um, yeah. And then there's also the what is the book club doing? So we're talking about the naming of the book club, and then what is it actually doing? And so to that effect, I see it as um, not just picking a book that looks interesting or seems like it's got all the answers or whatever, but it's books that help to um, deepen, bolster, and back the Lifeboat Academy's missions. So it's sort of like selecting books. So back to April.
I want to call it the Connect the Dot Challenge.
Mm.
Anytime that I've taken big leaps in my life, it's because somebody has presented me with a challenge. And sometimes I presented myself with a challenge and didn't even know it. For example, when I challenged the virtuosic songwriter to a challenge, how many songs can you write in this much time? How many songs can I write in this much time? The most amazing things happened out of that, just creating a challenge and going for it. And I think the subtitle could be knowledge transfer and creation, and which uses the aim, act, reflect system. Because basically, I think that's what it is.
Mm.
Those are my epiphanies of the moment, and now I'm passing on to Ben.
Really treating it as, oh, I've also been obsessed with the idea of the research project lately. That feels like it gives this focus and direction, because it is I think, Roland, you were saying yeah, the books that deepen, bolster, and back the mission. Um Yeah, I mean, because that's really what we're looking for is what are the justifications for the choices that we've made?
Yeah.
Where are there still open questions?
Yeah.
And where, well, and just like a lit review, you know, the classic form of a lit review is here is the current state of what people have done. There's this empirical work, there's this theoretical work, and there are these open questions. Our research project is meant to focus in on the open questions part, building on what we feel confident with and looking at how you do something with it, right? You know, so I think that's what I like, what I most am resistant to in the book club idea is that it just becomes an end in itself as opposed to a means of moving something else forward. And I really like the idea. I think Connect the Dot Challenge, um, there's something really juicy there. And, you know, it might morph a little bit still as we talk about it, but um, yeah, that's feeling right. I like the challenge part of it. And I think that that's and then clarifying what the challenge is, you know, kind of what is the gauntlet that we're throwing down. It's not how many books can we read, you
Yeah.
know, and I do think that there's something in like the challenge. um I've thought about kind of giving ourselves the job of you know, what would be the 12-week seminar reading list. And in part, one of the things that I think makes that good is you have to figure out, well, what are the topics that we're covering? And what are the 2 or 3 key things that you need to read to be familiar with it? You know, so it gives everything a focus. Um, I think that's I don't know that I'm really adding anything in there. I'm liking where this is going, so I'm going to pass over to Roland.
And I'm just doing a time check. It is about 2:45. And we've got quite a lot of information here. Um, and can we take this and I feel like we're coming to something. Can we come to something? Like what do we need at this point to be able to take this information and go to the next level? Over to April.
Um, I think it's time to put this into a proposal of some kind. Although I don't have a proposal at the top of my head right now, but I think that's where we're coming to. Um, over to Ben.
Yep. I think that I would make the proposal. Let's say that I don't care what we'll come up with the name as we go.
Yeah.
But I think that the challenge that is most appeal just to have something as like a straw dog to, you know, start to kick around. I'm going to put forward the proposal of we are inviting people to help us generate the reading list for the first semester, the Lifeboat 101, the first semester course as a survey course. So what are the topics that are covered in the survey course? And what are the resources that support those topics? And that it's treated and then so I think it's those of us who are the faculty or prospective faculty or grad students that the challenge is coming up with the reading list and debating, because that's going to be to get to the, we're going to come up with 10 topics to narrow it down to the 5 topics that we actually want to cover, or, ditto in each of those. What are the key readings in each of those? So I think in generating that reading list, we're going to have some really interesting conversations about, what is most useful and how do we determine what is most useful. And then the second phase could be inviting other people into that course. And so I think that might give us a lot of focus. And yeah, anyhow, I'm putting that out just as a starting point. Over to you, Roland.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what to add. Time to write. Okay. Actually, I'm going to scroll back up and look through our notes again from our gathering considerations. And the things that I see, we want to use texts that are ultimately, simply put, are useful to the Lifeboat Academy project. And we want it to be part of the actual research project. So this is our lit review. And at the same lit review, and at the same time, it becomes a kind of, is it syllabus for studying what is the Lifeboat Academy all about. And then we had a lot of talking about how to name it. And I think that was actually a really useful exercise. Trying to figure out the name was a really useful exercise to help us figure out more considerations around what it is. Yeah, and there's so many different ways in which we've talked about the Lifeboat Academy, and one of the ways is just a place where we can work at connecting the dots, because there's a lot of dots that make up the shape of what's happening in the world right now. Yeah. So this is just what I'm seeing from what I'm understanding from the notes. So um, yeah, back to April. I gotta stop stuttering like that. Oh my God. Okay, over to you, April.
You can stutter if you want to.
I
This is
don't.
a non-course space. The main topics. I don't have anything to add to the proposal except for some notion of the time frame. Are we planning to develop this in the next month? Do we need to schedule some meetings for the deeper conversations? Are there other people we want to attach to this set of ideas? Do we want to send a note about this to all the other Heartwork and Philosophy Guild members and say, look what a terrific time we had coming up with this proposal, but now we need your opinion to be included?
I mean, as a process thing, our standing policy is we recognize not everyone can be at every meeting, and so there is always a people we can't make decisions. We can reach tentative agreements that are open to objections or concerns. Likewise, I think proposals also are the first step, and then there is a proposal process whereby we agree to it. And it doesn't have to be complicated, but it would be kind of coming back, engaging other people in that feedback. So yes, definitely, we need to create opportunities for other people to provide feedback on this and shape it. I think the one question around the time frame, or I have two questions around time frame. One is we're talking about launching the 6 conversations. Do we want to be doing this in parallel to that, or is that too much? So that's one consideration in terms of timing and capacity. And sort of subparts to that, is there any additional development work that we need to do? Like some groundwork, background work kind of thing to start. And oh shoot, there was another one. Oh, actually, and the other one was, does this become a separate thing, or does it become sort of the focus of the Heartwork meetings? That there's oh, I guess that wouldn't make sense because we've got only an hour, so it probably should be a separate. We've got an hour and there's all sorts of other things that pop up, so it should be sort of scheduled separately. Yeah, I think that's the big question is probably when would we start something like this, and is there any groundwork to do before? So say, it's entirely possible that we could start the 6 conversations quite soon, and they're every week at this point. So it could be 6 weeks from now, we would be ready for the next thing. And is there any prep work that we could be doing in those 6 weeks? Or, let's say it takes us 2 weeks to get the 6 conversations going, 6 weeks to do it, and another 2 weeks to sort of clean up and, so what can we be doing in the next 10 weeks or so to get ready for this? And I'm not really sure, and that could be, this is one of those other conversations about how do we keep things going in between the meetings. But, just gathering, doing it like something online, something not in a meeting that gathers people's, what are the key topics? What are the 6 topics that you would want to cover in an introductory course? Or, what are your favorite books that you think are relevant? And we just have like a whole laundry list of, just brainstorm mode kind of thing. Anyhow, I think I've started rambling. I'm doing more than one point. So yeah, my 2 things are, how does it fit with the 6 conversations, and what's the prep work that we can be doing?
Yeah, and like Ben was saying, something that I try to remember to add, I usually try to send an email out when the video on YouTube has been uploaded to let guild members know that it's there. And I try to remember to add in there that this is the meeting, and like Ben was saying, that no decisions have been made, that any comments or objections or considerations can be forwarded as an and I think I would like to actually start an email conversation, and which is not my preference. I will let you know right now. It's not my preference, but I think that at least to start, email is the place to make it happen, because people go to their email more often than they check any other separate programs.
Mhm.
And then we can see and do. I think that is a good enough for now. And it may be that at some future point, people will be like, I'm just losing things in my email. Can we do something else? And then we can try something else. So actually having a conversation via email and engaging, maybe not even, well, anyway, and that would be part of the question, is that are we engaging just the guild members, or at what point do we engage the rest of the Lifeboat Academy, or. So and in emails, then we can make things really simple too for some of these things. Like sometimes a poll might make more sense than asking for people to write out their opinions, and then that becomes sort of an easy way of participating. I like the idea of just asking for, what is your laundry list of books that you think would be useful to Lifeboat Academy? And in part because I'd be really curious to see where might be repetition, more than one person recommending the same book, then that's indicative of something and would make that book interesting to look at. So it's actually a form of data gathering.
Yeah.
So those, I think, are the ideas that have been going around in my mind. So over to April.
Well, thank you. That helped me in my thinking. I think that to begin with, this is guild work, and that we do the email stuff, but just to guild members, that we agree in our timeline when we establish that, at what point we break it out to more guilds, and that we probably have a conversation beforehand with whatever other guilds might more naturally be linked to this anyway, like outreach, maybe. I think. And I like Ben's timing. And I think that takes into account the capacity question. Because certainly I won't be starting anything new until I see how the 6 conversations stuff works. But after about 6 weeks or so of that, I'll be ready to have a little bandwidth free to think about the so what. And so I vote for whatever the timeline was that been proposed, which has gone out of my head. But I think that's reasonable, doable, keeps my interest up, and hopefully attracts other people's interest. And that's all I have to say about that. Ben, over to you.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. I like, and so what I'm hearing as refinements to the proposal is that we think about the project plan breaking into legwork that happens over the next 6 to 10 weeks. That is guild work. And as part of that legwork, we're thinking about an engagement plan about when we invite larger circles in.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of poll, and I think that the friendly amendment I would like to make is, I feel like inviting people to that poll of what are your favorite books relating to, fill in the blank. It's such an easy thing to ask. And I think it's also, it is part of outreach. I think it's sort of working with outreach a little bit, because you're not going to work it. We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to do anything with it. What are your favorite things, readings related to resilience and regeneration?
Yeah.
And or however we want to frame it. And that the guild then is taking that information in, like we're processing the information, we're seeking input from, I would even extend it to the Lifeboat Network. And what's the key thing? I think it's really kind of coming up with a framing question. Do we want to say the lifeboat is a model of resilience and regeneration? What do you think the core aspects of resilience or regeneration are? And this is actually, I have been thinking, this is totally an aside, but relevant. Because I've been thinking about taking the research project. Well, it's actually April. It grows out of the BCCRN stuff and the idea of doing interviews with the mentors around what's your theory of change. And both as an engagement tool and as an information collection tool. And using this as an opportunity to reach out to people who are our close allies and saying, what does like, how do you see yourself relating to what we see ourselves doing? And what do we need to know as context from where you're coming from? And I think that's really what we're talking about, So, and it's still in that framework of, I think that I can craft this together as a proposal that will include early legwork, and there's some questions to resolve about how do we gather that information. And it includes initial data collection and an engagement plan, and then a plan for talking through, 10 weeks from now, what do those meetings look like? And then that gives us, as a guild, that gives us a nice reasonable amount of time to work out those details. So it's feeling pretty coherent. And then, obviously sending it around for, considerations and for refinements. Yeah, I feel like this feels pretty much like it's landed for me. Over to you, Roland.
Yeah, in terms of the timeline, I have questions around that because it could be like an academy, like a school where, the 6 conversations are the is the first semester, and then the connect the dots is the second semester. Or it can also be, I totally agree that they shouldn't happen at the same time, but at the second to last of the 6 conversations, that we can then start with the connect the dots challenge, the overlap, sort of like bringing people into continuing with the thinking, that same kind of working and talking together, and then transferring it over. So those are a couple of possibilities. I also think, thinking about, I would like for it to extend to the Lifeboat Network, and it maybe just like working out when that would happen, when would it make sense to do that? Because I would actually also, especially with polls and such, I'd like to be able to start putting that out on social media as a way of extending, of growing the network. It's like a form of advertising. These are polls that we're doing because of this event that, or this, it's not an event, is it? It's like a series that we have, and we're looking for your opinion or whatever. It just becomes ways of being able to let people know what we're doing, and hey, are you understanding this, and are you wanting to be involved? So those are my next set of ideas. And we are just a little bit past the hour. I would suggest that we wrap up and continue this as we've had talked about. I will download the video. I will send out the email, and with something about the conversation is continuing, or I think maybe I might actually just ask for your help, for both of you help on figuring out how to word it in such a way that it's invitational and continuing a conversation by email. So that is my proposal for where to go from here. If you want to do a final round for this, I'm good with that too. So I will pass it to April to do that, whatever, whichever.
Etc.
I
Blah blah blah. Yada yada
dot. Well, I think that what we've gone through in the last half an hour anyway really demonstrates how the collective thinking is captured, and then how that energy is translated into making very practical decisions that start to be time bound and committed to, really. And for anyone who has questions about the process and why do things take so long and why do we have to go through this set of steps, this is the answer. What we have done here is the answer to that. And as we get more practice in doing that, well, speaking for myself, as I get more practice in doing this, then it all starts to make more sense and to slot into really, really effective activity. And that's my last word on all of this. Over to Ben.
Yeah, ditto. I agree. And I think that I consistently find that going through the process, and it's also I think at some point I want to push back on the idea that things go slow. I know
Yeah.
there's this perception, but actually it feels to me like things come together in a much more solid way, much more quickly than, because the old way of doing it is usually jumping in with a proposal and then a back and forth around the proposal, usually some frustration, then often trying to go forward and it just lands flat on its face and you have to regroup. And so it feels like you get to the proposal a lot faster, but then this is, go slow to go fast. And in the end, I think there's also it's kind of getting used to, I've started in the circle process to be able to do the psychological inoculation. It's going to feel really awkward to get started. It's going to feel like, why are we here? What are we talking about? I don't know what we're doing. And then by the second or third round, everything's going to kind of click into place. And then you're going to be suddenly surprised when the answer presents itself and no one saw it coming, you know? And yeah, so I agree. I think there's something, well, we've already drunk the Kool-Aid, but to everyone else, the Kool-Aid is delicious. So I recommend drinking the Kool-Aid. It's quite refreshing. Over to you, Roland.
Well, I think I just wanted to point out that this is a practice of acknowledging the binary of the also and. I did, as co-caretaker, um, put in a little bit of structure because I had my timer on, and when I saw that we got to a certain point, then I pushed to the next step, which is actually a principle that comes from on my screen, the Mr. in the middle, of you give people a certain amount of time to, but you don't overindulge in giving them all the time that they think they want. So, and I'm recognizing in doing that's part of the circle process with structure,
Yeah.
is where we were able to develop so much so quickly. So the principle of also and. Oh, I like how my hand becomes really big when I do that. Okay. So yeah, you put your thumb on it. Any last words until we continue the conversation by email? April?
No last words. Thank you, both of you.
I'm feeling really good about this. And the other thing too is I feel like even though this is the only agenda item and we've got the seasonal planning, there's a whole bunch of what we did that is relevant to the seasonal
Yeah.
planning.
Yeah.
So I think the process works at multiple levels at the same time. So yeah, great meeting. I'm feeling really good about this. Over back to you, Roland. Take us
Awesome.
home.
All right. Well, thank you all. and to all a good night. I will send this out ASAP, which translates into as soon as possible. And thank you and goodbye.